Help us reach 1,000 subscribers. It was an ordinary night, and I had gone to Walmart to buy a few last-minute items. Since it was late, the parking lot was almost empty. I thought it would be quick. Go in, grab what I needed, and head back home. But something was wrong that night. Something I only realized when it was too late. I arrived at Walmart around 10 p.m. The parking lot was nearly deserted, except for a few cars scattered here and there. I chose a spot near the middle, under one of the flickering streetlights. I entered the store and quickly did my shopping. I picked up snacks, cleaning supplies, and a few items I needed for work. The atmosphere was calm, with few customers and employees restocking the shelves. After about 20 minutes, I went to the self-checkout, paid, and headed out to my car. As I walked through the automatic doors, I was greeted by the unsettling silence of the parking lot. As I walked toward the car, I noticed something strange. There was a white van parked a few meters away, with its engine running. I found it curious because it hadn't been there when I arrived. I ignored it and kept walking, but the feeling of being watched grew with each step. As I approached the car, I heard the sound of a sliding door opening. I looked back, and the van was still there, but now it seemed closer than before. There was no one visible, but the engine was still running, and the lights were on. I quickened my pace, trying to appear calm, but my heart started to race. When I reached the car, I put the bags in the trunk as quickly as possible and got into the driver's seat. I locked the doors immediately and sat there for a moment, trying to convince myself it was nothing. That's when I saw something in the rearview mirror. A man was standing a few meters from my car in front of the van. He was wearing a cap that obscured part of his face and seemed to be watching me. I tried to ignore him, starting the engine and adjusting the rearview mirror, but when I looked again, he was closer, now next to my car, at the passenger window. I pressed the button to lower the window just a crack. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to sound as confident as possible. He didn't respond immediately. He stood there for a few seconds before finally saying, "Can you give me a ride to the other side of town?" My first instinct was to say no, but something in his tone made me hesitate. It didn't sound like a request, it sounded like a demand. "Sorry, I can't," I replied, trying to stay calm. He didn't say anything else, but continued to stare at me. The silence was so oppressive that I could hear my own breathing. Suddenly, he knocked on the window, hard enough to make me jump. "Come on, man, just a ride." I put the car in reverse and started to back out of the space, but he stepped back and did something that sent chills down my spine. He smiled, a wide, exaggerated smile that seemed almost wrong. As I drove toward the exit of the parking lot, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw that he was heading back to the van. But what happened next was even more disturbing. When I turned to take the exit, I realized the van was following me. The headlights got closer with each second, as if they were trying to pressure me. I tried to stay calm, but every turn I made, they made too. Finally, I made a decision. I quickly pulled into a well-lit gas station and parked near the convenience store. The van passed right by, but not slowing down as it went past me. I couldn't see who was inside, but I knew they weren't good people. I waited a few minutes before getting back on the road, but I kept glancing in the rearview mirror the whole way home. To this day, I don't know what that man wanted or why he approached me. But every time I see a white van parked, I feel a chill run down my spine. Some nights seem perfectly normal until they aren't. Report 2. I never had problems shopping late at night. For me, it was even relaxing to avoid the crowds and the endless lines. But one experience in particular made me reconsider those moments. It was a Wednesday, and I needed to pick up a few items before a trip the following morning. As usual, I went to the Walmart near my house around 10 p.m. I thought it would just be another quick trip, but what happened that night still haunts me. The parking lot was almost empty when I arrived. Only a few lights illuminated a vast stretch of spaces, with a few cars scattered here and there. I parked near the main entrance and entered the store. Inside, everything seemed normal. I grabbed the items I needed and finished shopping quickly. When I left, the clock showed just after 11 p.m. The air was cold and the wind was softly whistling, but it was the silence of the parking lot that caught my attention. There was something unusual that night, something I couldn't identify immediately. As I approached my car, I noticed a pickup truck parked a few spaces away. It hadn't been there when I arrived, and the headlights were off, but the engine was still running. I tried not to think too much about it and made my way to my car, carrying the bags. As I passed the pickup truck, I realized the windows were too dark to see who was inside. When I reached my car, I heard a sound behind me. It was a crack, as if something had fallen to the ground. I looked over my shoulder, but I didn't see anything. I quickly put the bags in the trunk and got into the car. As soon as I locked the doors, I felt a chill run down my spine. It was as if someone was watching me. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw something that made me freeze. A person was standing behind my pickup truck. It was impossible to distinguish their face, but they were clearly looking in my direction. I thought about starting the car and leaving immediately, but before I could react, another figure appeared in my line of sight. This one was standing a few meters away, near the pickup truck I had noticed earlier. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I started the engine, but as soon as I did, the figure behind me moved quickly to the side of my car. They knocked on the driver's window, but said nothing. They just stood there staring at me while I tried to decide what to do. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but my hands were shaking so much that I dropped the device. When I finally looked up, there was someone else standing in front of my car, blocking my exit. They didn't know anything, but the way they moved was what terrified me the most. Each step seemed deliberate, calculated, as if they were surrounding me. Finally, I gathered the courage to honk, hoping to scare them off or attract someone's attention. The person in front of the car stepped back, but the one beside it remained there, motionless. I put the car in reverse, avoiding the figure that was blocking my way out. As I started to move, I heard something hit the back of the car, as if someone had thrown something at it. I accelerated without looking back, trying to get out of the parking lot as quickly as possible. When I reached the exit, I looked in the rearview mirror again and saw the three figures standing together, silhouetted as I drove away. I got home still trembling, unable to believe what had happened. Throughout the night, I couldn't sleep. With every sound coming from the street, my heart raced, wondering if they had followed me. The next morning, when I checked the car, I found scratch marks on the side and rear. I never discovered who those people were or what they wanted, but since then, I avoid going out alone at night. Some places that seem safe can hide things you never imagined. Report 3. Shopping late at night has always been something I appreciated. The calmness of the almost empty stores and the absence of lines made everything easier. But on those nights, I learned that tranquility can hide dangers. It was a little before midnight, and I was heading home after a long day. I decided to stop by the 24-hour market to pick up a few things for the week. I never imagined that this simple detour would change everything. The parking lot was practically empty when I arrived. Only 2 cars were parked, both far from the main entrance. I chose a spot near the illuminated door, thinking it would be quick. Inside, everything seemed normal. I grabbed what I needed in a matter of minutes and went straight to the self-checkout. There was no one else in the store besides me and the attendant. When I left, I felt the impact of the silence outside. The air was cold, and the only light came from a few poles scattered around the parking lot. Even with that emptiness, I tried to ignore the discomfort and walked toward my car. As I got closer, I noticed something that hadn't been there before. A black car had parked 2 spaces ahead of mine. It looked new, but the windows were dark, making it impossible to see who was inside. I ignored it and kept walking. As soon as I opened the trunk to put away the groceries, I heard a click behind me. It was the sound of a car door opening. I glanced over my shoulder, but the black car remained still. I convinced myself it was just my imagination, finished putting the bags away and got in the car. As soon as I started the engine, I noticed something in the rearview mirror. A person was standing right behind the car, in the shadows. I couldn't see their face, but they didn't move. My first instinct was to lock the doors and wait for them to leave. But they stood there, motionless, as if purely intimidating me. I decided to roll down the window just a crack. "Do you need something?" I asked, trying to sound firm. They took a step forward, still keeping their face in the shadows. "Do you have a light?" they said, in a low, dragging tone. "No, I don't smoke," I replied quickly, feeling my heart race. The man didn't say anything else. He just stood there, leaning to the side, as if waiting for something. The feeling of discomfort grew with each passing second, and I decided it was time to leave. I put the car in reverse, but it didn't move. I tapped the horn lightly, hoping he would get out of the way, but he just stood there. Finally, he took a step back, and I took the opportunity to accelerate toward the parking lot exit. But when I looked in the rearview mirror, I saw that he had returned to the black car. I thought it was all over, but as I drove down the main road, the headlights of a car appeared in the mirror. It was him. I tried to convince myself it was a coincidence, but with every turn I made, he made too. He kept a safe distance, but didn't let me out of sight. When I reached the traffic light, the car stopped next to me. I couldn't see anything but the reflection of glasses in the dark glass. As soon as the light turned green, I accelerated, trying to lose him. After several streets and turns, I finally managed to get away. I stopped at a well-lit gas station, hoping to feel safe before heading home. While I was stopped, I looked across the street. The black car was parked there, with the engine off. I couldn't wait any longer. I left the gas station and drove straight home, locking all the doors as soon as I entered. I spent the night looking out the window, waiting for him to appear again, but he never came. To this day, I don't know what he wanted or why he bothered me, but since that night, I avoid empty parking lots, especially after dark. Some encounters are impossible to forget.